Welcome back, Focus Learners, to another explainer. Today, we're literally ripping open a 5,000-year-old cold case. We are heading all the way back to the very dawn of ancient Egypt for a true crime-style archaeological investigation. What are we looking for? Well, a founder, a unifier, the literal starting point of one of history's most fascinating civilizations. So let's just dive right in. Right around 3100 BC, something absolutely monumental happened. The distinct, separate regions of Upper and Lower Egypt were violently and permanently stitched together into a single, unified state. But the central question, the one that's been bugging Egyptologists for over a century now, is this. Who was the true architect of this unification? Who was history's very first pharaoh? If we just take the word of ancient historians like the Egyptian priest Manetho, the answer seems super straightforward. Manetho tells us all about a legendary figure who won renown and founded the empire. He calls him Menes. And for a really long time, Menes was the undisputed first human king of Egypt, the guy who finally stepped out of the realm of myth and into actual recorded history. But here is exactly where our mystery starts. You see, the name Menes is what's known as a Sej and B name. It's essentially a throne name or a pronomen. The later king lists from the New Kingdom, they only recorded these throne names. The catch is that the contemporary 5,000-year-old archaeological evidence we're actually digging out of the sand doesn't use throne names at all. It uses Horus names. So we're left with this legendary throne name and no definitive archaeological match. Section 1. Enter the fierce catfish. Introducing Narmer. Our prime suspect in this historical whodunit is an early dynastic king, and his reign kicked off right at the tail end of the 4th millennium BC. His name is written in early hieroglyphs using the rebus principle. It basically combines the symbol for a catfish, the nar, and the symbol for a chisel, the mar. Put them together, and Egyptologists translate Narmer to mean painful catfish, stinging catfish, or, honestly my personal favorite, fierce catfish. I mean, it's an incredibly badass name for an ancient conqueror, even if it sounds just a little bit funny to our modern ears. And fierce, he absolutely was. We actually have a literal smoking gun for this, the famous Narmer Palette, which was discovered way back in 1898 at Hierakonpolis. On one side, Narmer is rocking the white crown of Upper Egypt, aggressively smiting a captive. Then flip it over, and he's wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt. Now, for decades, scholars argued over whether this was just some symbolic, mythological scene. But later on, the discovery of a year label depicting this exact event pretty much confirmed it. This artifact represents an actual, violent, historical conquest of the North by the South. Now, archaeological evidence does show that some integration and trade definitely happened under Narmer's predecessors in Dynasty 0, guys like King Ka or Scorpion II. But it's right here, around 3100 BC, that Narmer finishes the job. He completes the subjugation. He basically acts as the bridge between those scattered pre-dynastic kingdoms and the mighty First Dynasty, which is then carried forward by his successor, Hor-Aha. Section 2. The alias debate, the Menes mystery. Okay, so if Narmer unified Egypt, does that automatically make him the legendary Menes? I want to play impartial judge here and just present the evidence to you, the jury. See, there's a really vigorous academic split on this. One camp of Egyptologists firmly believes that Menes was simply an alias, just the throne name for our fierce catfish Narmer. But the opposing camp, they argue just as passionately that Menes was actually his successor, Hor-Aha, the guy who inherited the newly unified kingdom. The real sticking point here is the contradictory physical evidence. On one hand, we have a seal impression from Abydos that shows Narmer's name alternating with the MN symbol. That's a pretty huge point in favor of Narmer being Menes. But then, you've got the Nakata label, which places Hor-Aha's name right next to a shrine enclosure containing that exact same MN symbol, which strongly suggests Hor-Aha is Menes. To make things even more confusing, we have later necropolis seals from the First Dynasty kings Den and Ka that explicitly list Narmer as the absolute first king, in the correct chronological order. So the forensic evidence is totally split, and it keeps this cold case wide open. Section 3. Footprints in Canaan, expanding the empire. While the academics are busy debating his alias, Narmer's actual physical footprint in the ancient world is just undeniable. To really grasp the massive scale of his foreign expeditions into Canaan, consider this number, 33. That is the number of Egyptian seracs, those royal crests containing a king's name, found in Canaan dating to this early period. And out of those 33, a staggering 20 are attributed directly to Narmer. His predecessors had almost zero presence there, and his successor's presence vanished pretty rapidly. So during Narmer's reign, Egyptian influence in Canaan absolutely peaked. And the wealth he pulled from these conquests, it was practically unimaginable. There's this staggering figure recorded on the Narmer mace head, an artifact commemorating his victories: 1,422,000 goats claimed as plunder. That is alongside 400,000 cattle and 120,000 human captives. Now, even if we account for some classic ancient royal exaggeration, the sheer administrative capacity required to even conceptualize numbers that high, well, it tells us we're dealing with a massively powerful, highly organized new state. Section 4. History's first named queen, Neith-Hotep. Behind this newly forged empire was also a really crucial alliance with Neith-Hotep, whose name beautifully translates to Neith is satisfied. She is very likely the earliest non-mythical woman in history whose name is actually known to us today. For a long time, the prevailing theory was that she was a northern princess from Lower Egypt, which is where the goddess Neith was worshipped. The whole idea was that Narmer married her to politically consolidate his violent military conquest of the north. It's a union that might even be celebrated right on that famous Narmer mace head we were just talking about. But as we know, archaeological cold cases are always evolving. Recently, a 5,000-year-old rock inscription was discovered in the Sinai by researcher Pierre Tallet, and this new evidence throws a real wrench into things, raising the question, was she actually Narmer's wife? These inscriptions strongly suggest she might belong to the next generation, perhaps acting as a powerful regent for King Jair. Once again, the sands of Egypt refuse to just hand us the easy answers. Section 5. Modest Tomb, Massive Legacy. As we bring our investigation to a close, we travel to the royal cemetery of el-Kab. You'd expect a monument fitting a founder of a 3,000-year empire, right? Instead, what we find is a shocking physical anticlimax. Narmer's tomb is made up of just two mud brick chambers, known as B17 and B18. The total size? A mere 31 square meters. I mean, it is incredibly modest. It looks so much more like the small graves of his pre-dynastic predecessors than the sprawling, complex tombs of the later First Dynasty pharaohs who came after him. And because this site was heavily pillaged repeatedly over the last 5,000 years, the artifacts left behind are oddly humble. Archaeologists recovered a few dozen flint arrowheads, a singular fragment of an ebony chair leg, and some mud jar ceilings. That's the whole shebang. It is a remarkably sparse collection of physical remnants for a king who fundamentally altered the course of human history. Oh, and there is one final quirky piece of evidence nearby. Kings of this era built these large mud brick funerary enclosures. Well, there's an unidentified one nearby playfully dubbed the donkey enclosure because it's flanked by the graves of 10 donkeys. Many suspect this belonged to Narmer. Why? Because unlike the enclosures of later First Dynasty kings, who horrifyingly sacrificed dozens of human retainers to accompany them into the afterlife, the donkey enclosure contains absolutely zero human sacrifices. It stands as this really unique transition point between the old ways and the new imperial cult. So, at the end of the day, we are left with a split verdict on our cold case. Was Narmer the legendary Menes? We honestly may never definitively know for sure. But does the specific name of the founder truly matter when placed next to the sheer gravity of his accomplishment? Whether we call him the mythical Menes or the archaeological reality of the fierce catfish, Narmer forged a blueprint for unified civilization and statehood that literally set the standard for the modern world and echoed through the millennia. Thank you for joining me on this Explainer Focused Learners. Keep questioning history, and I'll catch you next time.